difficulty. Oh, there we go. Now we're live. We had a little bit of technical difficulties, but that's okay. Guys, everybody is doing social media, but are you doing it right? And that's what we're going to be talking about today with my friend Jordan. We're going to be talking about podcasting. We're going to be talking about business, even how to start a business from the ground up, which he's done a couple times. So, guys, it could be a great episode. But first, I want to say thank you guys so much. We are now ranked in the top 1% of podcasts in the world. And today is our 400th episode. So I just want to say
Awesome, man.
thank you
Hey,
guys.
congratulations for that.
Thank you, Jordan, for hopping on and hanging out. And because we're celebrating, we're actually giving away our brand new pre-workout coffee, high velocity coffee, vertical momentum coffee. So if you want it, you guys have to enter your name, and I'll leave it in the comments. And it's just a $30 bag, 20 servings. You can't go to Starbucks and get two drinks for that kind of money. And I also want to thank our new sponsor, brand new sponsor, Maxwell Soaps. If you're like me, a diabetic, and you have diabetic itchy skin, all their soaps have no detergents. So if you have very sensitive skin, definitely check them out. But what they also do is for every bar that they sell, they give one away to the homeless population in Los Angeles, California, to help clean up the city. So I just wanted to give a big shout out to Maxwell's. So Jordan, my brother, what's going on? How are you? And how's your day going?
Oh man, the day is going well. I know we talked a little bit, Richard, offline, and I'd share that my dad, was just in town, and I know you recently lost your dad, so want to give you my condolences for that. It's losing a parent. I lost my mom a decade ago next month, and it's never easy, right? It's never easy when we think about the people that help shape and help mold us. So I hope your family's doing well with that, and getting to spend time with my dad. There's a lot of things that you come to realization when you get to see your parents. It's been a few years since I've seen my dad with the pandemic happening and things going on with his business. And frankly, the pandemic has had him afraid, like a lot of people maybe watching this. Maybe you've been afraid to go out in public. Maybe you've been afraid to go and explore the world. And so I just had to have this kind of really man-to-man talk with my dad. And I said, Dad, you're not getting any younger. You have 5 grandkids here. Get on a plane. Millions of people do it every day. I'm buying your ticket. When are you coming? I had to literally get him to come. And man, when I tell you it was the most powerful weekend, because I feel like we had some reconciliation that happened. We had some, years of maybe trauma that I was actually able to give my dad advice. And I never thought I'd be in a position of that for that. And I remember my dad said something so powerful to me, Richard, and he said, you know what? I never thought you'd have the success you have when you didn't go to college. And how many parents out there, and if you're a parent and you're watching this, I hope this resonates. How many of you out there have that same thought? My kid is not going to be successful if they don't go to college. If that's you, I want to change your perspective today, because college isn't the end all be all. I would probably challenge that maybe 60% of people that go probably shouldn't go, because they're going because someone told them to go and not because it's something that makes them happy. And so if that's you, if you're watching this today and you're like, you know what, maybe my perspective has been skewed a little bit towards what society said, maybe take a step back and see, what do your kids want to do? What are their strengths? What are their passions? What actually makes them happy? Because at the end of the day, I want happiness for my kids. I don't want, a piece of paper that I force them to get because it's what society said that they should have.
I love that. And Bill Gates, he quotes himself a lot. People ask him all the time, well, are you a college graduate? He says, no, but my accountant is. So I rather hire people that have degrees than actually have one. And I think we should in today talk more about entrepreneurship than
Sure.
they should be talking, because, when I was growing up, like my dad, he worked for 30 years for a company, got a watch, and got a retirement. That's
Yeah.
no longer the way of the world anymore.
Yeah.
This right here, what we're looking at, this screen, that's the new way of the world. So talk to us a little bit about where you come from, where you grew up. Now, your dad said he was in business. So was he an entrepreneur?
Yeah, yeah, and no, it's interesting. Back to this weekend, right? There's so much value in when we can have conversations with people that have been around longer than us. And so, my dad was actually in my yard teaching my 17-year-old how to cut bushes. Like taking his pruner. He owns a landscaping company in Maryland. He's had it for 40 years. You think he knows thing or two about cutting bushes? So he's literally with my son for about an hour, and I'm hearing him have this conversation, and he mentioned something that I didn't even know. That I didn't know that my grandfather was a blacksmith. He actually helped people in the Philippines in villages make machetes, like make the molds and then hammer them out and then actually sharpen them. And he was a teacher. He taught people how to do that. And so, my grandfather was a blacksmith. My father owns a landscaping business, and I'm involved in a couple businesses. And so, man, how cool would it be to have a fourth generation entrepreneur in my son, or one of the other four that we have? That would be so cool to be able to have. And so that's really kind of a little bit about dad. He grew up in the Philippines. I actually didn't meet him till I was 12 years old. So our relationship started a little later in life. And again, I like to tell this story to people because I could have been completely different about this. I could have said, when my mom asked me, "Hey, do you want to meet your dad? He lives in Washington D.C." I could have been like, "Screw that guy. Like, what is that guy? Why would I want to go meet that guy?" But something in me said, "You know what? I bet he's got a story. I bet he has some knowledge to share with me." And that's part of my heritage. That's part of culture. Like, he looks similar to what the way that I do. Like, I need to know that side of my family. So at 12, I flew out there to DC from Portland, Oregon to meet my dad for the first time, and that's really where our relationship started. But my mom, man, incredible woman. Like I said, lost her a decade ago next month. The hardest loss that I've ever experienced in my life. It was about 6 months of a kind of a downward spiral in a fog. But man, this woman taught me so much, Richard. She taught me how to be kind, how to have a sense of humor, how to be positive, no matter what your circumstances are. She was born in 1958, folks, with one lung. Okay. And when that happened in the 50s, the doctors basically told my grandmother, they said, listen, she's probably not going to live to 18. She's definitely not going to be able to have any kids. And, this is kind of, here you go. Here's your baby. And, my mom looked at it and said, kind of, challenge accepted. She ended up having five boys. Our youngest brother just turned 21 on Saturday, had him when she was 40 years old. So just in hearing her story, it's like, you wouldn't live to 18, check that one off the box. Wouldn't have any kids. She ends up having five boys, and she lived to 54 years old. So she took that, hand of cards she was dealt, and she's like, forget this. I'm going to make my own deck of cards out of life. And she taught me how to look through the positive lens, how to have a sense of empathy for people, and how to be kind and have that sense of humor. So, man, when I think about everything my mom gave me and the example that she showed me, even though we were poor, even though we had a lot of adversities and challenges. And then I look at my dad, who was a hard worker, started working in the rice fields at 7 years old, and now has had a landscaping business for 40 years. Man, I take, some of the good things from them. I apply those to my life, and man, good things start to happen when you can take positive experiences from examples and turn them into positive things.
Now, my mom was a nurse for over, now she just 77 years old. She has been a nurse for 50 years. And I never met a Filipino until I met all her nurses that she works with.
Yep.
And I love paella. I'm hooked.
Yep.
It's one of my guilty pleasures. But I've never met a person from the Philippines that did not have a strong family, matriarch, patriarch, and a strong work ethic.
Yeah.
And I think today's, the world that we live in, I think you can get more, you can be more successful. Like my friend Gary Vee always talks about how the work ethic. If you have a strong work ethic, you can beat 80% of the people.
Sure.
So, and I'm sure that was something that they really instilled in you, and your brothers was a work ethic, right?
Yeah, yeah. My dad, man, I can remember my first time going to DC, right? Like, this is a big deal. This is flying from the West Coast to the East Coast. So you have that challenge in itself. Now I'm meeting this side of my family that I don't know anything about. That's kind of challenge number two. And now I've got to figure out how to live with these guys for a couple months during the summer. So I had a lot of firsts that I was going into at 12 years old, but I learned really quick exactly what you said, Richard. My dad was a hard worker. He was up early. He was up at about 6 a.m. He would make his coffee. He would eat his breakfast. He would put on his boots, and then he'd be out the door. And he was out, whether it was our yard he was working in or a neighbor's or in people in Maryland or Virginia. He was very meticulous about making sure he did the best job. So when we left a yard, you couldn't see a single stick. It looked like no one was there. Like we blow off the patios. Like, so his attention to detail, but also his work ethic, I mean, that was instilled to me really early on. And let me tell you, folks, I don't know if anyone watching or listening has ever done landscaping for 12 hours a day like I had to do. It's not easy, and you're learning several lessons. And also, if you're an extrovert like I am, meaning I get my energy from being around human beings, just imagine not being able to speak to a human for 12 hours because you got 35 yards to cut and a crew to manage of people. So, man, I learned a lot of lessons by doing landscaping from about 12 to 22 during the summers, and even a longer stint after our first child was born when he really needed help in his business.
So now, when did you start saying, okay, I've learned the lessons from my, because sometimes we learn lessons from our parents,
Yep.
but we kind of don't, we kind of forget that, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can see
Sure.
the mistakes that they made, so we
Yep.
don't have to make the same mistakes.
Yeah.
But when you first started in the entrepreneurial space, did you learn the good from your dad and also what not to do as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely learn the what not to do, and I'll be open and transparent. I was just talking to my son about this the other day. I was like, son, like your grandpa's had a business 40 years. He only has the same business card he ever printed that says his name on it and a phone number. I said, good business decision or bad? He goes, bad. I said, why? He said, because there's no website, like he has no presence, and I was like, so he got it right away. And then I said, all right, let me tell you the next thing. He still to this day sends people invoices once a month that he hand writes. I said, good business decision or bad? He said, bad. I said, yeah, because now there's software that you can use that takes that process off of your plate so that you can automate it. And so there's not a human having to do that process. And so, like, literally in real time, literally this morning, Richard, I was able to extract some of those lessons and have my son even see where he went wrong. And he's got 1 year until he's about to retire. And so what it means is that it means you can still have a successful business, but it also means you missed out on a lot of potential clients and opportunities and growth because you didn't know what you didn't know. And that's what I run into all the time, Richard. I run into a lot of people that are business owners. I run into a lot of people that have so many things in place, but they're missing one ingredient here or they're missing an ingredient there, and they don't know how close they are to really making a major impact.
And I love it. And one thing I love about you, since I knew you were going to come on the show, I've been stalking you. I've been reading everything. I've must have listened to. So if your podcast numbers have gone up, I've probably listened to every episode.
Hey, I appreciate that. I appreciate it.
But one thing that really touched me this morning, and you don't really have to go into it, but the post you did on LinkedIn about getting beat up as a little boy, and how some people make mistakes in life. So and I think a lot of people that go into business, they may fail at business, but then they quit,
Yeah.
and they don't realize that failure is an event. It's not a person.
Yeah.
So you want to go into what you talked about today?
Yeah, no, I'd love to share. Yeah, so, being growing up poor, it meant we moved a lot, and I don't know, looking back, I'm sure we could speculate, Richard, it could have been we got evicted, maybe we needed to upsize because there was another kid coming. Like, I have no context into what the situation was. I just know that between, birth to 14, we moved probably 14 times. So it was a bunch. And so on the positive end, now change is easy for me, right? Because I experienced a lot of it as
Yeah.
a kid. So that's one cool thing that happened out of it. But from the negative end, there's one situation where we actually moved 2 towns away. And to me, it wasn't a big deal. I grew up in a metropolitan area that had great public transportation in Portland, Oregon, great bus systems, great light rail systems. So my mom was pretty confident that if she went with me on this route, that I would be able to take these two buses to get to my middle school, because I literally begged her. I was like, I grew up, even though we moved a bunch, we always stayed in the same school district. So I was able to go to the elementary and the middle school with my friends up through sixth grade. And we were moving the summer of seventh grade. And so I said, Mom, please, I want to finish the year there. Like, these are my friends. I know them. So she agreed to it. And so my bus route went like this. I would get a bus in front of our apartments. I would take that bus. It'd be about 25 minutes. It stopped in front of a 7-Eleven convenience store. And so my mom went with me on this route. She met the lady, Rosa, that worked there, and she knew exactly the system that I was going to be putting myself through to get to school each day. And so one day, a day just like any other, I was playing Mortal Kombat 2 like I did. I brought 50 cents with me, put a couple quarters in. I would play Mortal Kombat 2 until Rosa would be like, hey, the bus is out there. And then I would go out on the bus. And so one day I'm playing the game and I hear the bells behind me ring, and a male voice yelled, hey, Daniel. And I kind of stopped for a second, but I was like, well, I'm not Daniel. Let me just keep playing. So I play the game. And within about a minute, Richard, my body was lifted. Next to Mortal Kombat 2, there was a Terminator 2 pinball game. And back then, the trigger was what you squeezed. And so there was an actual metal gun. I was thrown against that. My ribs hit it. I was punched several times, thrown on the ground, and handcuffed and thrown in the back of a cop car. And I remember the lady was literally yelling at the cop. She's like, I know this kid. He's here every day. They're like, shut up. We're going to arrest you. I mean, they were yelling at her. And my only saving grace, folks, was, and I wasn't a great student. I'm not even going to front and say that I was the best student, but I knew the night before I did my homework. And so I begged. I was like handcuffed, hurting and crying in the back of this cop car. And I said to the officer, I said, sir, if you'd please look in my jacket. I know I did my homework. It'll prove to you my name is Jordan Mendoza. I'm not Daniel. And man, I tell you, when he, reached in that pocket, he grabbed, this folded up piece of paper, and it said Jordan Mendoza. And Richard, he looked like he saw a dang ghost, because he knew right then that he screwed up. And when I tell you, I mean, this thing could have been drawn out. I mean, we're talking about the city of Portland. This is the city that made this mistake. But I, learned enough lessons from seeing my mom go through what she did. I got to see a grandmother get dementia and cancer, and felt that pain for her. And so I just knew, even at 12, I had the self-awareness to understand that these folks made mistakes, right? We all do. We all make these mistakes. They shouldn't have jobs as police officers if they're going to take this excessively. And so I wanted them to lose their jobs, and that's exactly what happened. And I went on with my life.
Okay. And like I said, so obviously I'm following you. So I just want to make sure you know that I'm
Yeah,
supporting everything that you do. I
appreciate
support
that.
100%. Now, so what were some of the jobs or careers that you started? You said you started a couple businesses. What?
Yeah. So yeah, man, so I've always been, had the gift of gab, as they say. I've always been able to have conversations with people. And I think that all stemmed from being a kid. And of course, as a kid, your parents, our mom tried to get us involved in all kinds of sports. I was playing soccer, I was playing baseball for about 12 years. And one thing I noticed about myself, Richard, is that I actually enjoyed fundraising more than playing the sport. I enjoyed getting the candy bars and the beef jerky and going door to door and selling that stuff. I felt like there was something there, like I could, impact a conversation with people. And so so I always kind of known that about myself. And so in eighth grade, my very first job was going door to door to sell newspaper subscriptions. Right. And so door to door was easy for me. I had already done this as a kid, doing fundraising. So I was like, wow, this is cool. I get to make money doing this. And they fed us Burger King. It was awesome. We'd go and talk to 100 people a day. And I tell you, man, like, that sets the foundation, Richard, for everything that I know today. Because if you can go out and knock on 100 doors a day, 90 people are going to tell you no, more than likely. You may get 10 yeses, but the lessons that you get from developing that tough skin, the lessons that you learn from how to read people's facial expressions, how to use your environment to spark a conversation, man, there's no more powerful thing than you can do than what I did. And so by the age of 22, you fast forward into a number of jobs, I've heard over 200,000 no's before I turned 22 years old. And so today a no is like, really? That's easy. And I just keep going. And so when you can get to that level of confidence, when no just means next opportunity, it doesn't mean the end all be all, man, your perspective will really change.
And I love it. And for me, I love sales. I love talking to people. I love, watching people's expressions. Like for me, I took the three hardest jobs. I sold cemetery plots. You talk about a lot of those. I sold door to door, and then I sold timeshares for years. And you know, I've taken, like you said, hundreds of thousands of those. And but sometimes, you know, you have to learn how to read people, which is I love poker. I'm a
Yeah.
big guy. You have to learn to watch people. Like there was the older guy, and I always tell the story. He was crushing it every day, crushing it. He's like 70, and he was like getting like 8 sales a day in timeshare. And I'm like, all right, you got to tell me how you do it. And he's like, well, before I get here an hour early. He says, I read a couple of newspapers every day. And he said, when I get up to go get that person a cup of coffee, I'm going to touch their shoulder. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? He's like, if they let me touch their shoulder, that means they let me into their safe space. They're more than willing to listen. And I think a lot of salespeople, they talk way more than they listen.
Yeah.
Right. So now talk to us, because, getting those first couple no's when you're knocking on doors, and then you kind of get into the mood and you kind of get into the groove. But I think one thing I learned from knocking on doors is don't ever think that the person is not going to buy, because the person that doesn't look like they can afford it is the one that's actually going to buy.
Yeah. No,
So
that's such a great point.
give us a little bit of sales 101.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. And for anyone watching this, grab a notepad. I'd love to share some practical advice with you today, because I think, what you're saying is brilliant. It's all about your attitude. It's about your mindset. It's about your attitude. If you can have a positive mental attitude, okay, and this is an acronym, PMA, all right, equals OPM. And what that stands for, folks, is a positive mental attitude equals other people's money, right, Richard? If you have a positive attitude, people are going to want to work with you. If you had a grumpy attitude, guess what? People are going to not want to work with you. It's almost that simple from a contextual standpoint, but people feed off of your energy. Right? When you go and you're speaking with another person, if you are not excited about your product and service, why in the heck should they be? So here's three other tips. You got to have a smile, right? You got to be smiling at your prospects. You've got to maintain eye contact. And when I say maintain it, I don't mean creep them out and look into their soul, but it's about an 80% thing where I'm looking, I may be writing down, so I need to look away, but I'm maintaining that eye contact so they know that I'm listening. And the final thing is relate. Like, figure out, how do I relate to this person? Is there something that they're wearing? Is there something I can see that I'm able to relate to them? And finally, if you don't have that enthusiasm, if you're not, again, excited, why should they be?
And like my friend JLD, John Lee Dumas, when I had him on the show, we were talking. He's like, you have to know your customer. Like I knew when I was selling the timeshare that if I have a Filipino couple sitting in front of me, number one, they're going to be very analytical. Number two is they're pretty much not going to use credit. They don't use credit cards much. So it's going to be a cash deal. But once you realize who you have in front of you, it's a lot easier. And I think a lot of salespeople or even podcasters have no idea who their ideal avatar is.
Sure.
Just think, well, I'm going to start a show and everybody's going to listen. And, like I was taught in the military, it's always better to be a sniper than it is to pray and spray. What has been your, because like even like JLD said, sometimes you have to go an inch wide, but you got to go a mile deep to find your perfect avatar. Or else, I think it was Jim Rohn that said it. If you're selling to everybody, you're selling to nobody.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. And that's something that is going to tweak over time. I think for people, I think so many people get caught up in trying to make it perfect the first time that they get so paralyzed and then nothing happens. We hear about that term, analysis paralysis, but it is truly a real thing. And I remember, and I'd love to share this with you because I think this would be helpful for anyone that maybe you've got the idea, maybe you want to start that podcast. I'm going to tell you, my first podcast, Richard, failed. It had 2 episodes and probably no one's ever heard them. And the reason why it failed is I didn't have clarity. I didn't know why I was doing it. So that's the first thing I would recommend if you want to start a show. Get clarity, like understand your why. What's the end goal that you want to accomplish by putting out this content? And that's going to help you determine who you actually are going to want to serve and help you be able to niche down to serve that particular audience. On my second attempt, I knew why I was calling it Blaze Your Own Trail. I knew that I wanted to tie in my hometown team of the Trailblazers into have a dual meaning for the show. I knew I wanted to interview people and learn about their journeys, not successes, but everything that got them to success. And I knew I wanted to impact people in a positive way. So once I had those things dialed in, the rest was actually easy after that.
And like you were talking about paralysis of analysis. And a lot of people want to start shows, but you're like, I got to have the perfect camera. I got to have the perfect mic. And if you go back to like Gary's first videos that had like 10 million views, it was with a flip cam at a yard sale.
Yeah.
So it goes to show you that you don't have to have the best mic or the best camera, as long as you have the best content that you could possibly put out. So talk to us for a person that's wanting to start a podcast. A lot of people say, well, there's 2 million podcasts out there, but only 50% are active.
100%. Yeah. And that's
if
the
you
thing to think
past
about.
Episode 13, you're like in the top 10%.
That's it. Yeah. So I would say if you want to do it, be committed to maybe a goal. Maybe your goal is you want to release 100 episodes, right? So maybe set that as your goal. And that way you're not concerned about episode 1 through 30, because I think what happens is people get so caught up to making each episode perfect, again, that they don't actually put the content out, to your point, Richard, where there's only people creating 13 episodes and then you don't hear from them again. And so getting it out is what I recommend. And then sharing it, making sure that you just don't feel like people should be able to find it. Go out and put it out to as many places as you can. And I think that's something that people undervalue as well. They're like, well, my host is Anchor or Spotify and it gets sent out to these 8 places. I'm good. And they kind of stop there. Well, you'll tell everybody just like I will. That's not going to fly. Like if you're about impact, if you're about reach, if you're about, trying to get your message out there, you've got to make sure you're part of the private syndications and the directories. And you've got to have a strategy where you're taking your long form content and you're turning that into short form content so that you can distribute it across multiple platforms, because that's truly where you're going to get the best feedback. It's where you're going to experience the most growth. And then you're also going to be able to truly know where your audience is and who they are.
And I love that because, I hear it all the time because I help people get their podcast started. And they're like, yeah, I just put it on Anchor and they got it on Stitch on a couple of different ones. But I'm like, but where else are you? Because I'm learning, and obviously this is what I want you to teach us with social media, that if you're not everywhere, you're nowhere.
Sure.
If you're sleeping on LinkedIn, you're losing. If you're sleeping on TikTok, you're losing. Because I thought I was doing good with like 25,000 connections on LinkedIn, and you got like 60. So I got a lot of work to do. So talk to us about people that are sleeping on these different social media platforms as LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah. I think it really boils down to 2 things. It's you don't know what you don't know, and you might be afraid to put your message out there. I think those are really the 2 things that stop creators. And the reason why I know that is that was me. That was me in 2019 before I got active on LinkedIn, I started kind of watching and consuming content and then thinking to myself, who the heck is going to listen to Jordan Mendoza? Who's going to want to listen to what I have to say? And that's called, limiting beliefs. And I think, as human beings, we all deal with those. Like if you would have saw me in 2019, any video, you'd been like, man, this guy's a rookie. He doesn't know what he's doing. But now I love to watch those videos because it shows me how far that I've come. I used to hate getting in front of the camera. I used to hate, doing these types of interviews, and I thought I looked awkward and I thought I sounded bad. But now, again, hindsight's 2020. You get to go and look at the fruit that those beginning pieces of content have created. And so if I was going to give anyone practical advice, let's just take LinkedIn. Is that fair? We just start with that
Yeah,
platform.
that's where
If I'm going to give you
where we
kind of
connect.
like the playbook of what you need to do right now, if you're not active on the platform, it is to optimize your profile. And I'd love to kind of give some practical tips in the strategy that I'm helping my clients with. It's part of my 12-week program, and I can just kind of rattle this off. So if you're watching, folks, grab a notepad real quick, give you about 3 seconds, or grab your notes on your phone and write this stuff down, because if you apply these things, you will see positive changes. It's not a question, it's a matter of fact, because we're doing this consistently with our clients. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is you want to look at your headline image, right? That's that big banner image on your profile. You want to really evaluate that, and for one, see, have I uploaded a new image, right? Because LinkedIn will provide you with a greenish blue background. So if it's still greenish and blue, that means you haven't uploaded a custom banner image. So that's the first thing I would do, is think about, what do I want this banner, or more importantly, let's talk about what it actually is. It's a billboard. And as you know, Richard, we drive by billboards all the time. What do we know about billboards? Well, they get attention and they're not cheap. So, everyone on LinkedIn, if you are watching or you're listening to this or seeing the replay, you have got a free billboard. LinkedIn does not charge you for that real estate, and you can showcase who you are, what you do, and what you want people to do when they find you on that billboard. All right, so that's really step one. The second step that I would say is look at your actual picture. If your picture has you in a suit from 2017, ditch that picture and put a picture of what you look like today. No one cares about what you look like in college, or what, when you're wearing that suit in corporate. Like, look, this is what I'm wearing today. Like, you know what I'm saying? This is what Richard's wearing. That is who we are. If
It is.
Richard shows up in a suit, be like, bro, are you wearing a suit to work? Come on. Like, take
Yeah,
that janky picture down and put up the real you.
yeah,
Like, we want to see you on LinkedIn, because at the end of the day, when you take the online offline, like we've done, Richard, where we are now face to face,
yeah,
who are they going to see?
yeah.
Are they going to see the suit guy? Or are they going to
Nope.
see this guy with the t-shirt on? They're going to see this, because this is how I really am. And so LinkedIn, you're dealing with humans, folks. There's a person on the end of every profile on the platform. So you got to really think about that. All right. So the third thing, right? We've talked about the banner image. We've talked about your actual picture that some of you guys watching, you're probably laughing. You're like, I need to update mine. It's got me in a suit. That's fine. Go update it. The third thing you want to tackle is your headline text. All right, this is a massive opportunity where you get to share. And Richard, if you're looking at mine, it says, I help service providers build authority and monetize social media. So I start with a service statement, because when people search for social media or social media help, I want to be found in those search results. Does that make sense? The
Yeah.
second thing that I do is I put in a bunch of keywords that I want to be found for in the SEO as well. So things like podcast host, coach, you might see MBTI certified practitioner. I may put featured in Yahoo so people know that I have some credibility. And then I even do a call to action, like follow me for daily positive content, because I want to tell people what to do next. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes
All right.
sense, because
And then you're right, because I'm not done yet. I've got more here. I want to give these guys the
I'm
playbook.
loving it.
So right. So the next thing you want to do is dive into the ever so elusive about summary. Okay. And the reason why I say ever so elusive is we're hiding, folks. Like, we are hiding as humans behind our accolades. We're hiding behind our resume, and we're literally taking our resume and we're pasting it on LinkedIn. How much value does that add to the person that wants to know about you? It adds zero value. So what I teach is tell a story. Take people back. Share some of the things that I've shared with you today about my upbringing, about the people that have influenced me, and about where I've been. Because if you see where I've been, you can start to realize that I can help you get to where you want to go. But without that context and without a human connection, people are just going to keep scrolling. And so the more you can tell your story and tell people who you are, not just what you are based on the certificates and accolades, the easier business gets, folks. When you can create an emotional relevance with people, business is easy. And so that's what I would challenge you to do is look at your about summary. Does this read like a resume, or does this tell a story about who I am and add value to each reader so that they want to check out my content next?
And I love it, because I always say that stories will sell. Facts tell, but stories sell. And
100%.
but now, like I said, I'm just really tripling down on my LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I think I'm there more than I am any other platform. But I also talk about, don't be that guy that just, hey, bro, I see that you're on LinkedIn. I want to connect. And then boom, 30 seconds later, you get a canned 5-page script.
Sure.
And I'm thinking, does that stuff work? I mean, it can't work. For me, it can't work. It's kind of like meeting a girl the first time for the first date and say, all right, let's go get married. It's like,
Yeah.
slow
Yeah.
down, you know?
Yeah, let's talk about that because this is the big elephant in the room, right? And listen, you and I both know we've done enough cold calling, we've heard enough no's to know that sales can be just a volume game. And I'm going to tell you guys this: if you're looking for transactions on LinkedIn, they're there. You can find them. But if you're also looking for sustainable relationships to build long-term strategic partnerships, relationships that could last well into the end of your career, they're also there. You just have to tackle them and you have to decide, which person am I going to be? Am I in it for transactions, or am I in this for relationships? So if you folks do what Richard said and you try to go for dessert before you even get to the dang appetizer, you're going to have a lot of bad dates. You're going to have a lot of people that probably unconnect with you, or that might block you, or that may call you out, frankly. And so when you start a relationship with someone in the DMs, it should be predicated on building a relationship. And so if you want feedback, what would I do if we were connected? It would be something like, hey, thanks so much for connecting. Let me know if there's any way I can add value to you. Have a great week. Right? Because that's what a first connection was. Just imagine, Richard, if we first met and this was it. Hey, would you like to buy my product or services? Like, just imagine we're in real life and that's what I sounded like. That's what you sound like on LinkedIn when you go and cold DM people.
No, I do. I will say that I have cold DM people, and I probably cold DM you, and I probably and I always say, I love what you're doing. Keep on doing a great job, and that's it. I'm not trying
Sure.
to sell anything. I'm not trying to buy anything.
Big
I'm
difference
just
there, though.
want to let you know that you're doing a great job. I'm watching what you're doing, and I'm trying to build a relationship slowly. Because
Sure.
I believe in generational relationships.
Yep. Love it.
That's what I believe in. And like anybody that I've ever had on the show, now I have like generational relationships with them. I know their family. I see the pictures of their kids, because
Yep.
not only do I connect with them on here, but I connect with them on Facebook and other parts.
Yep.
So trying to build that symbiotic. It's kind of like building a community and
Yeah.
building.
100%.
So now, okay, you have a podcast. Now, for me, when I first started, I was afraid to say, hey, Jordan, I would love to have you come on my show. I love everything you're doing. Because I was going about it the wrong way. I would be like, hey, bro, I have the number 8 veteran podcast. Why don't you
Yep.
come on? And people are like, who is this? Who's this asshole? But now if I see, for like you, I'd be like, hey, Jordan, I would love to have you come on, because I would love to promote what you're doing. I try to add more value than I take.
Yeah.
So talk to us about adding value when you're trying to get guests. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you kind of hit it on the head. And I tell this to clients all the time. I said, if you're not adding value, you're subtracting. Right? If you're not adding value to somebody, you might be taking away. So how do we do that strategically with podcasts? And I remember the early days, man. I remember being afraid to go after a guest because I put them on this pedestal of like they're better than me. They've got these things that I want, and I remember putting people up. And really, what broke the ice for me is when I reached out to Heather Monahan. And she was somebody I really looked up to. I'd been listening to her podcast, her book Confidence Creator, just her story, watching her TED Talk. It was like, man, if I could just get this story out to my audience, how many people could it impact? So I remember mustering up the courage to cold DM her on LinkedIn and just say, hey, I'm a big fan, I've seen this. And then it was kind of crickets. And so I was like, yep, yeah, this is pretty standard. I didn't think she was going to reply. And then she replied, and then she ended up coming on the show. And man, that one conversation really sparked, me accelerating leaving corporate America. So I tell people all the time, like, you are one conversation away. So don't ever let your fear dictate whether you're going to reach out to somebody or not, because you have no clue. They may have, feedback for you. They may have a message. They may have something that could spark something in you, or they could just end up being, like you said, Richard, that generational friend that, leads to an amazing partnership or relationship down the road.
Now, talk about, because I know we said we're on a time limit, so I
Yep.
just want to get the most value for the audience as we can. For me, I love interviewing people. They call me the GI Joe Rogan or the male Oprah, because I like to talk about things that most people don't ask about. Like I had Mr. Sims on, and he's like, "Yeah, I know you're going to ask me about my time with Elton John." I'm like, "Not really." I'm not going to ask you, but I am going to ask you about the time that you were a 17-year-old bricklayer and you
Yep.
were homeless, but
Yep.
you were dating your wife at that time. He's like, wow, nobody ever asked me that question. So
Yep.
talk to us about, how you can differentiate yourself from all the other shows out there.
Yeah, no, I love the way that you're doing that. And I think you're very similar to me, Richard, where it's very instinctive and it's intuitive, but the foundation is based on active listening. And so what do I mean by that? Well, it's not just listening to hear, but actually listening to understand, with the hopes that you can extract something to bring back to that person. And so that's how I actually do it, because I'm very similar to you. I've never had a script. In fact, I hate scripts. Like, people tell me, hey, and I'm like, that's not how I learn. I can't, if I had a script, it would almost be like a crutch or a paralyzation to me. And so for me, if you are intently listening, usually something that someone tells you can spark your next question to what you want to ask. And so that's, the way that I do it, but everybody is different. We all, some of us are, kinesthetic learners. Some of us are, we learn based on auditory. Some of us are visual. So you just have to figure out, understand what your style is, your communication style, your preparation style, and then double down on what works for you.
Okay, so last couple minutes that we have, where do you see the future of business? I see the future of business in this little box right here. I see the future. Podcasting, I think, is really taking off, and I think it's going to get even more popular, because when you're working out, it's hard to watch YouTube when you're on a treadmill or when you're running outside. So a lot of people love video, but I think audio still has a place. That's why I
Yeah.
love Clubhouse. I'm a big Clubhouse guy. So what do you think is the future of podcasting and business?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we're seeing some early signs of it with what we're seeing in the VR space. I'm picturing not too long from now, the concerts and the conferences that we're going to on a daily basis in person. We'll probably be doing some of those things in VR, and just think about the capabilities that you would have in, let's say you have a building, and in that building you've got the venue, and then you've got other places you can access, right? There's a digital currency you need to be able to actually meet backstage with these creators or these artists and things like that. So I think that we're going to see a bigger shift into that space over time. And the other thing is, there's been a big push over the last probably 3 or 4 years in smart devices, and I think that's going to continue to rise. I don't think we're too far away from walking into our house like we used to see on the Jetsons and saying, hey, uh, pick up the next line for my meeting, and we're just going to be talking to someone on our wall where there's a camera on our wall, and we can have 4 people on that screen. Like, I don't think we're far away from those times, and I'm excited about that shift, and what it's going to do from like an emission standpoint, as we invest more into things like solar and things like digital spaces where we don't maybe have to pollute the air by having to get on a plane to go travel to meet somebody. We can literally meet from the comfort of our homes, like you said.
I love it. So, last two questions. How do we find you? How do we support your mission? Where do we find your podcast? How can we get Jordan in our lives?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate, again, thanks so much, Richard, for the opportunity. Anytime I can come on and share and hopefully inspire people to be different or do something different, man, that's my ultimate goal. And so, best place to find the show, it's byotpodcast.com. You'll be able to find, past episodes, future episodes, subscribe to our newsletter, check out some videos, learn more about my company. And company wide, it's Blaze Your Own Trail Consulting.com. You can check out some of the services we do. We've got a 12-week coaching program that helps take you from optimizing to monetizing on LinkedIn. And what I'd love to do, Richard, for your audience here, they just DM me either on LinkedIn, on TikTok, or on Instagram. Okay. The word vertical. If you DM me the word vertical, I will give you $500 off my 12-week course. So I'll leave that active for 48 hours if that's okay with you, Richard. So just DM me the word vertical. You get $500 off that 12-week course. And again, thank you so much, Richard, for the time.
Now, I'm a closet Trailblazers fan, just so you know.
Love it.
I've been following them since way back.
Oh yes, you
So,
remember my good guy here, Clyde the Drexler. Then, right? You got to know Clyde the Glide. Yeah, man. That was a guy that I looked up to a lot as a kid until he left to Houston.
Yeah, you guys had some high quality teams. A lot of people did even Scottie Pippen play for the Trailblazers.
Yeah, back in 02, 03. Yeah, I got to see him play. Was at a few of those games, and yeah, those are some good times, man. It's sad to look back and realize how close we were on a number of occasions, but you got to support your teams. I've been a diehard Blazer fan ever since back in the 80s. So I'm one of those loyal fans that no matter where I live in the country, I'm always supporting the hometown team.
I love it. So, last question I have. We live in a crazy world. We still live in a COVID world. No matter where you live, I had the pleasure of having one of the Iron Chefs on last week.
Awesome, man.
He was talking about how the food industry has been hit so hard that over 100,000 restaurants have closed in the United States.
Wow.
So there's a lot of parents out there that are driving Uber, DoorDash, just to put food on the table.
Yeah.
So if I ask the average American to do something in 7 days, they're pretty much never going to get to it. But if somebody's listening to this and we ask them to take an actionable step in the next 24 hours, they're more likely. So if somebody's struggling with their business, somebody's struggling with their podcast, what is something they can do in the next 24 hours to start to get some clarity?
Oh man. Yeah. So I've got 2 things. Is that okay? We have time for 2.
So this is your time.
The first thing is I would write this quote down and then read it anytime you get into that place where you're feeling like you can't get ahead. So write this down. And I wrote this quote in 2019. It helped me tremendously in 2020, knowing what that year was like, and it's still adding value to people today. And what the quote says is that the struggle might be real, but the good news is that every struggle has a free gift called a lesson. So hopefully that adds value to your audience. The second thing I would say is grab a sheet of paper out, grab a notepad and grab a pen and draw a single vertical line down the middle. And I want you on the left side to write down every single thing and don't discount anything that you're grateful for. Okay. Literally, I'm air, water, I've got clothes, I've got food, I've got pictures of, whatever that is. Okay. And then I want on the other side of the sheet, write down what your goals are, what your dreams are, what you aspire to have. And one thing that you're going to notice if you make this a daily practice is that you're going to start to see some of the things that you are grateful for and some of the things that you want. That list is actually going to start filling up, and you're going to realize that you've got a lot more to be grateful for. So hopefully those 2 things add value to everybody.
I love it. And like I say all the time, gratitude and depression can't live in the same space.
100%.
All right, guys. So I want to thank our sponsors. Like I said, if you guys want this coffee, you got to sign up for it. We're giving it away, $30 value, and then you'll also become a member of our coffee club. And then I want to thank our sponsor. If you guys, like I said, if you like your skin nice and clean and not leaving a film on it, definitely check out Maxwell Soaps, because they're actually helping the world clean up the world a little bit at a time. Jordan, I want to say thank you, brother. I'm so grateful for you, and hopefully our relationship can just begin today.
100%. Hey, thanks so much for the opportunity.
All right, brother. Hey, guys, remember vertical momentum. The only way to go is but up. All right, guys, I'll catch you on the flip.